The town of Redstone was the kind of place where time slowed down. Tucked near the edge of a vast desert, it was surrounded by rust-colored hills and dry grasslands that stretched to the horizon. Life moved at its own pace there, quiet, simple, and rooted in family. Mike Thompson worked as a car mechanic, spending his days under the hoods of dusty pickup trucks and old sedans. His hands were always calloused and stained with grease, but his heart was gentle, especially when it came to his family. Daisy, his wife, ran a tiny flower shop in town. Despite the arid landscape, her shop bloomed with color and life, an oasis of roses, lilies, and wild desert sunflowers. She juggled her time between customers and caring for their home, where love lingered in every corner. Their 10-year-old son, Ethan, was the joy of their lives. A bright, curious boy with a mop of chestnut hair and a laugh that could lift anyone's mood. He spent most of his afternoons in the backyard, tossing a frisbee for the family's two beagle dogs, Buddy and Rocky. Buddy and Rocky weren't just pets, they were family. Daisy had found them 3 years ago, on a cool spring morning behind her flower shop. She had arrived early to prepare for a busy day when she heard faint whimpering coming from the alley. There, beside the overflowing dumpster behind the shop, lay two tiny beagle puppies, barely alive, shivering under a torn piece of cardboard. Their eyes were dull with fear, their ribs visible through patchy fur. Daisy hadn't hesitated for a second. She scooped them up with trembling hands, wrapped them in her apron, and brought them home. She bathed them, fed them warm milk with a dropper, and gave them the kind of love they'd never known. Since then, Buddy and Rocky had thrived. With shiny coats, wagging tails, and boundless energy, they became Ethan's best friends. Every day after school, the trio raced around the yard. Ethan laughed as the dogs leapt through the air to catch the frisbee, often tumbling over each other in friendly competition. At night, they curled up on soft round cushions on Ethan's bedroom floor, snoring gently as he drifted to sleep. Life was beautiful, uneventful, and safe. Or so they thought. It was a quiet Wednesday evening in early spring when everything changed. The family had finished dinner, and the sky outside had turned a deep indigo. Ethan had gone to bed early after a particularly long game of frisbee. Buddy and Rocky, as always, trotted after him, tails wagging with sleepy enthusiasm. Mike sat in the living room watching a rerun of an old Western movie while Daisy washed dishes in the kitchen. The only sounds were the occasional clink of plates and the hum of the ceiling fan. Then came the barking. At first, it was a low growl, nothing unusual. But within seconds, it escalated into frantic yelping, claws scratching wildly against a wooden door. Mike jumped up, heart pounding. "Daisy, something's wrong with the dogs," he said, already rushing down the hallway. Just as he reached Ethan's door, it creaked open from the inside. Rocky stood there, eyes wide, ears pinned back, barking urgently. Without warning, the dog lunged forward and bit into the hem of Mike's pants, not out of aggression, but desperation. He pulled and tugged, leading Mike toward the room. "What's going on, boy?" Mike asked, his voice tightening. The second he stepped inside Ethan's room, the world seemed to stop. Ethan was on his bed, frozen in place, eyes locked on something slithering just inches away from his bare feet. It was a rattlesnake, thick, coiled, and poised to strike. Its rattle buzzed like a sinister drum roll in the still air. Buddy stood protectively between the snake and Ethan, his teeth bared, growling with a ferocity Mike had never seen. "Don't move," Mike commanded, his own heart now thundering in his chest. Without hesitation, he dashed forward, scooped Ethan up, and ran out of the room, yelling for Daisy to call 911. Rocky followed them, still barking, while Buddy remained behind, standing guard. Mike turned back just long enough to see Buddy take a quick step sideways, eyes never leaving the snake. It hissed and struck, but missed. Within minutes, the emergency rescue team arrived. They entered with caution, equipment in hand, and carefully removed the rattlesnake. One of the officers, a weathered man named Carlos, shook his head in disbelief. "You're lucky," he said, kneeling to inspect the window where the snake had entered. "It came in through this small gap, probably drawn in by the warmth." "If it weren't for those dogs," Mike nodded, still holding Ethan, who hadn't spoken a word since. Daisy clutched both of them, trembling with aftershock. "Buddy never left Ethan's side," Mike said quietly. "He was ready to fight." Carlos turned to the dog, who now sat in the hallway, tail thumping weakly against the floor. Rocky sat beside him, licking his brother's ear. "That's loyalty," Carlos said. "Pure and simple." After a thorough inspection, the team declared the house snake-free and sealed the gap in the window. Only then did they leave, leaving behind a shaken but safe family. Later that night, Ethan finally found his voice. Sitting on the living room couch between his parents, with Buddy resting his head on his lap, he whispered, "They saved me." Daisy ran her fingers through his hair. "Yes, sweetheart, they did." The next morning, Mike took both dogs to the vet for a checkup, just in case. Buddy had a minor scratch near his paw, but nothing serious. The vet, an older woman named Dr. Ellis, gave him a few pats and said, "You've got yourself two heroes here." When they returned home, Daisy had baked a batch of peanut butter dog biscuits. Ethan placed them in a bowl and set it between Buddy and Rocky, who wagged their tails excitedly, unaware of just how close they'd come to tragedy the night before. That weekend, the local newspaper ran a small story. Beagle Brothers save boy from rattlesnake in Redstone home. The article praised Daisy for her act of kindness in rescuing the dogs that fateful morning. But the real spotlight was on Buddy and Rocky, the discarded pups who had become protectors. Life slowly returned to normal, though the family never forgot that night. Mike reinforced all the windows, and Daisy now checked every room twice before bedtime. But one thing had changed forever: how deeply they appreciated the quiet bravery of two dogs who had once been unwanted and alone behind a flower shop. Ethan never went to bed without first hugging both Buddy and Rocky. Every night, he whispered, "Thank you," before turning out the light. And every morning, when the sun painted the desert sky with orange and gold, the three of them ran through the backyard again, laughing, barking, and chasing frisbees, because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, like rescuing two scared little dogs from behind a dumpster, can circle back in the most unexpected and miraculous ways.